invited my co-host, Anita Voth, my co-host and partner, to join me here today to talk about the power of voice and finding your unique writing style. So obviously we own DaisyChain Legacy Publishing, and I've also written a book called Telling Your Truth, a step-by-step guide to writing your memoir. And our goal is to help you write your memoirs, to help you write about yourself, about your life, to get your stories down and share them with others. Because, obviously, as somebody passionate about memoir and about writing stories and about people's stories, my goal, our goal, Anita and I, is to help people capture those stories. So let me just jump right into it, because you could just go to DaisyChain Legacy Publishing to find out more about Anita and I and find out about kind of what our business is, if you want to know that. If you want to buy my book, that's great, but it's still pending publication, so stay tuned on that one. But I just want to jump into the topic today, because I know that anybody who might be seeing this live with me today or as a recording is going to want me to get into the meat of it. So I'm going to do that. So what is voice when it comes to writing? What is style, right? So you know how you have favorite authors? You know how you really love your favorite authors? And you know how if your favorite author ever moves away from the way they write, you generally aren't happy about that. I mean, I'm thinking about some of my favorite authors when I was younger, like Judy Blume, for example. She had a particular way of conveying information, a particular style. Her books were popular because we kind of knew how she was going to go about the story. You know, another one that comes to mind is like Catherine Cookson. I used to read a lot of Catherine Cookson when I was younger. Matter of fact, I read so much of her books. I think she wrote hundreds of them, and I read so much of them that I stopped reading them after a while, because it became a formula and her voice was so prevalent that I actually got bored of it. So we don't want that to happen to you guys. But what I'm saying is, think of Stephen King, think of some of the authors that you love, that you know and love. We tend to find such familiarity in how they write. And that's because they write with that voice. They have a way of conveying the information, of conveying the action, of sharing the descriptions that is uniquely them. And that's what voice is in writing, and that's what your unique style is. This can be just as important for somebody who's a best-selling author as it is for somebody who writes one thing, and that one thing could easily be one book and one memoir, right? So that's what voice is. Voice is you. It's your style. It doesn't have to necessarily be your personality. It can just be how you convey the information in the written word. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how to find that as a writer. Whether you're writing poetry, whether you're writing memoir, whether you're writing fiction, it's how to find that voice that makes your style different from the other writers and makes your readers remember you. So number one, write regularly. Now I know this sounds like a pretty standard thing to say, and probably isn't, the deepest kind of hint that I could give you. That little bing, that's somebody messaging me, because I can't really turn that off. Yes, and that's my co-host asking me if I'm going to go live. So hang on a sec, guys. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to just tell her that I am live. I don't know why she's not getting that, but she's not. So technical difficulties are the name of the game for me. Anyways, write regularly. So here's the thing. This is what people do. Often they will do this when they're thinking, I want to get down my stories. I want to write my life story. I want to share this with people. What they tend to do then is think, I'm just going to do it this one time. I'm just going to write my memoir or do this one writing experience one time. And then they think it's going to be great. Guys, it's not going to be great. It's not going to be great if you only ever write one time, or if you don't have a lot of experience writing. And I'm not saying you have to be a professional writer, you have to ever sell anything. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that you got to practice, because practice kind of makes perfect. So if you feel like you don't know whether you want to write from a humorous standpoint or from a serious standpoint, or you want to write with a lot of mystery, just write something. When we are getting down some thoughts, just get them down, just practice them out, and then you'll be able to hone in on what works and what doesn't work, right? So write a scene, right? Whether it's in your memoir and a fiction, just write a scene and then write another scene and then write another scene. And then from those, reread them, read them out loud, that kind of idea, and then get somebody else to read them as well. And then from there, you'd be like, this works, that doesn't work. That's why writing regularly helps you find your voice, because you're practicing. Not like in my hair today, but whatever. Okay, the next one is, again, different styles. I kind of hit on this. Okay, so I see my co-host here. Let me see if I can bring her on camera. Just a sec, guys. Add. Okay, isn't this fun? We're supposed to do this in a different way, but I had to do it like this. Okay, adding. Okay, I think we're adding Anita, so she's going to join us. So I was going to say experiment with different styles. Now, what are different styles, right? I touched on that a minute ago. So you've got humor, you've got sort of flowery description writing, you've got action, you've got mystery, you've got tension, right? You have what we call kind of passive writing, which is a little bit more of the description, which is a little bit more of the where you're talking about things that did happen, versus active writing, which is like stream of consciousness, which is like right now. And those are all different styles. And here's what you can do when you're practicing. You can even do this in your journal writing if you're a journal writer. And they say that everybody who writes a good memoir is a journal writer. Honestly, I don't keep a journal because I don't really like keeping journals, but that's just not my style. And if that's your style, that's okay. But what I was going to say is, when you're practicing your writing, practice some different styles, some different genres. So write from a humorous perspective and see if that comes easy for you. Write with a little bit of mystery and tension and see if that comes easy for you. Write facts and see whether or not those are easy for you to convey. But keep in mind that you always have to double check your facts. But writing regularly and trying different things is going to help you be a better writer, like all in all. Okay, the next one. And this is one of our bigger topics as well, and we do talk about this. I talk about this in my book. I get into it quite a bit, and over time, if you join any more of these lives or any more of our Daisy Chain events, you're going to see that we talk a lot about purpose. What's the purpose of writing a memoir? What's the purpose of writing anything? So Anita Kim, Anita wants to join. I'm going to see. I thought I was letting her join and accept. Oh golly. I tried that already and it didn't seem to work, but okay, so I'm trying. I'm trying to add my co-host. Oh wait, I think she's joining. Let's see, because if she comes on, that's literally going to be like success.
Hello.
Oh, I hear her.
I can see you and me.
Why did you join me? Because I was feeling really lonely on here. Anyway, I'm gonna jump right into my next point there, and then Anita, I know you had some things you want to add, so I'm gonna let you talk after I finish this point. I wanted to talk about purpose, because what is the purpose of writing a memoir? Why do we write our thoughts down? Why do we keep journals? Well, let's be honest. We do this, we write these things to share. For some people, it's very therapeutic, and we write for our own emotional journey, for our own emotional health. And for others, they write because they just want to share with others. They want to get that down. For some people, they write because they want to have that history, okay? We believe, Anita and I at DaisyChain Legacy Publishing, that writing is a legacy, that writing your memoir is a legacy, that you are actually creating something that future generations will be able to have of you, even if they never knew you. And honestly, think about that. Think about, any of you, have you ever done any genealogy stuff, or like done the DNA tests, or gone on to ancestry.ca, and say you find something, a piece of information from your history, from your ancestors, or information about your ethnicity or something, and you come across that and you're like, whoa, like I never knew that. Well, that's why we write memoir. That's why we write journals, and then hopefully that those turn into memoir, because it's that legacy. It's thinking about generations that might come after you, be that your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, people that are living long after you're no longer here on the earth. You then, with a memoir, have the opportunity of leaving something of you behind that will never be forgotten. I think that's a really big purpose. I think that is one of the reasons why writing a memoir is so important. Anita, I'm going to pause.
I totally agree with you. And in fact, my grandmother, so my kid's great grandmother, My mom put together a memoir of her writings and her interviews and different things. And, when my son read that, he learned about his great grandmother's history, and he was shocked, like what she went through, because that was World War II. And of course, they have no clue what war, I mean, I have no clue what war is like, but learning that about his, about where he came from was eye-opening for him. And he so appreciated having that to read and understanding where he came from.
And it's a treasure, isn't it? And that's the
It is.
interesting thing. I know for myself, now that my own grandmother has long since passed, and in my immediate family, my grandmother, my mom, my aunt, I'm the oldest woman, in that segment of our family line.
Yeah.
And I'm the oldest woman, but I'm only 57. And what I'm saying is I feel too young to be the oldest. And it's very unfortunate. It's very tragic to me that I'm the oldest in that regard. And I think about,
Yeah.
my Oma, and I think about my mom, and I think about my Aunt Jerry, who was loved by so many. She was a teacher, and then a vice principal, and then a principal at a school. And she didn't have her own family, but her family were all of her students for all of those years, and she was dearly loved. And yet she
Yeah.
passed when she was 62, and nowhere were her stories, captured. And she is
Yeah.
one of the greatest inspirations for me for starting Daisy Chain and for writing about how to write memoirs and for getting into this topic, because those stories are lost. Those stories are
Yeah.
forever lost if we
And
don't capture them ourselves or get somebody to help us capture them for other loved ones.
yes. And and it's not always that the purpose is about passing on historical facts. Sometimes it can be passing on events that happen and how we felt
Mm-hmm.
about those events.
Right.
I,
Yeah.
like, in my own family, my sister passed away suddenly in her 30s. And so, seeing how my mom processed that, like losing her daughter, is
Yeah.
very different than how I would process that, losing my sister, and
Mm-hmm.
different how my sister's daughter would process that, losing her mother,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we all lost the same person, but from
Yeah.
different perspectives. And so my mom
Exactly.
journaled that whole process, and I, she hasn't published it or anything, but I can read how it felt to her to go through that. And so
Yeah.
sometimes we write memoirs, which are just a snapshot of a piece of our history, not our entire autobiographical
Exactly.
life. It's just a piece of something that was significant, can be a great starting point.
Yes, exactly. And I want to add to that real quickly and just say that obviously our topic today is finding your unique voice, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people think that that voice, when it comes to writing a memoir or sharing their life story, that it has to be not only the whole story from beginning to end, but also it has to have an intrinsic lesson in it.
Mm-hmm.
And while having a moral of the story or a lesson, for your readers and or even just, your family down the line, is really good. It's great to have a lesson. We love those books that have morals to the story. We love to read those biographies, where somebody learns something really important. But it isn't always necessary. We can write memoir. We can share our stories, in writing, for ourselves and with others that are just our feelings. We
Yes.
can write memoir that is more journal focused, or we can write memoir that is really a lot of poetry. For example, I know somebody that writes like about the sun, all of the time. Maybe she's even watching today. If you're watching, hi, Sandra. She writes about the sun, and every day she has a different perspective on that, where she's sitting in time, what time of day that is, who's around her, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what memoir can be as well. It can be those snapshots of time, how we interpreted the world, what we thought about. And this is going to lead me to my next point about finding your voice, or the voice of the person that you are helping to write about. Because don't forget, memoir doesn't have to be your life. You can write or help write somebody else's memoir, like that of maybe a parent who has already passed, or maybe is sort of going into their kind of the end of their golden years. That's very possible. If you have any questions about that, you can ask. But what I wanted to say is the next point is staying true to yourself. Finding your writing style, finding your voice is about being who you are. And, this is, again, the writing regularly, the trying different genres, all of these are important, but really if you are writing a memoir specifically, when that memoir reflects you or reflects the person you're writing about, there's so much authenticity in that, and that is so engaging. And we can feel, even when we're just reading a chapter length memoir, we can feel that we know that person, even if we never met them, because their voice is really shining through.
Yeah.
So always
And
being true to yourself. Yeah.
I almost look at it too, like, when you go shopping and you're trying to figure out your style, right? You're going to
Yeah,
try different things on. Like, you're like,
it's
oh,
true.
I love this hat because I saw it on someone else.
Yes.
And then when you put it on yourself, you realize, okay, that doesn't suit me. And so sometimes the starting point is reading other people's memoirs or famous, even just books, and going, oh, I love that style. Why do I keep going back to that author's writing? Because I really like their style. But when you try it on yourself, it may not be the right fit. So that's why, going back to your earlier point of practicing,
Yeah,
you could pick one topic and write it in 3 different styles and see which one, oh, that's really my voice, right?
I like that.
um Even though you
I,
might like it on
I like
someone
that.
else, it might not be you.
Well, and the truth is too, Anita, that until we try writing one particular memory, for example, from a slightly different perspectives, we don't know which perspective is going to fit as
Right.
best. For example, there might have been something really traumatic happened to you in your life, and I would never want to negate that or minimize that trauma in any way. But sometimes once we've come through that trauma and we've recovered from it, if we write that from kind of a humorous perspective, that can actually reveal a whole bunch of different emotions and can actually help the reader relate to it. So, we can take trauma and we can write it really seriously. We can write it from a really emotional perspective. We can write it from a mysterious perspective. We can write it from a humorous perspective. And I would challenge anybody, to take a scene, take a memory, and write it from maybe 3 different perspectives. And then you'll see which one hits the best.
Yeah.
And that could be your writing style.
Yeah.
So it could be a really good exercise to find that. I want to make one more point here, and then Anita, I know we had a couple of questions that you wanted to ask to round out this topic. But so the next point I wanted to make is about balancing emotion and objectivity. So we kind of hit on this a minute ago, but I wanted to delve into it just a little bit deeper, because this is also something that people can use in their essay writing. It doesn't have to be in memoir writing or in fiction writing. Even if you're like a student, for example, or you're working on a piece or an article or something, you can put in a little bit of opinion in there and share your thoughts and feelings. But what we need to do with writing, any kind of writing, is be emotional, but then be objective, right? Or be objective and then be emotional. So the best types of writing that we read, okay, now I'm talking about being a reader here, are the ones that kind of go back and forth. Maybe they have a lot of action, but then they have like a quiet sort of dream sequence, or maybe it's very full of description and very dreamy, and then that's balanced by quick action. So really, we just want to make sure that we balance things out when we're writing, and keep in mind that as you do that, that will also help you find your writing voice, because you'll know which one. I literally don't know. I think that was my husband's cell phone getting a text message. I'm going to have to kill him for this one. But anyways, you get my point. You got to balance the action and reflection, or the emotion and the objectivity.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take a sip of water here. And Anita, you had something that you wanted to bring up.
Well, I feel like, because I got in late, you did cover, I was going to ask you if you have any kind of tips and tricks for finding your style, but I feel like you've pretty much covered that at the beginning.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you've done a great job at covering, how to find your style. I just would encourage people not to give up on it, because, and don't be so critical. Maybe if you're too critical, get a close friend or loved one to read it and see what they think. Because, I was just talking to a friend yesterday who was like wanting to write her, and she's like, I said, talk about your life. You have led an incredible life. And she said, oh, it's just my life. Like, nobody's interested in that, right? And
We are,
so
though.
I said, I am. Like, I think your life is amazing. And so if we get someone else to read it, that can help. Someone that we trust and won't just give you, yes, ma'am answers, so that they can be honest, but, get a different perspective, or read it out loud.
Yes.
And then listen to yourself reading it afterwards, because it helps our brain become objective to it than if we're just reading it in our head. So
Well,
maybe I can just add those things.
yes, and then the other thing, and I think we'll end with this, is another really good way to find your writing style and what works best for the information that you're wanting to convey is to be inspired by other writers. So if you're looking to write a memoir, or you want to share your stories, or again, the stories of a loved one, read a bunch of biographies, read a bunch of memoirs. That was Randy's phone again. Read a bunch of memoirs, because in so doing, we will find which kind of writing style bores us to tears, and we'll find which kind of writing style, really engages our attention. And so by allowing ourselves to be inspired by other people, that's how we can find the way that we want to convey the information, in a way that we think is engaging to others. So I think we'll stop with that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're going to be doing more lives over time, and we also are going to have some guests, some people who have written memoirs, and other writers and publishers and stuff like that. We're going to have people on our podcast as guests, so I hope you'll join us for that as well. Anita, was there anything you wanted to say before we go?
Well, just as a little teaser, we will be having a guest soon who's actually a death doula. So that's someone who works with someone who knows that they're dying, and to get that perspective, because I think that's going to be eye-opening. But anyway, in the meantime, it's Kare and Anita here reminding you to keep your legacy alive. See ya.
Bye.